Probably at our August business meeting or September. And, it was the board that proposed, should we look at March, as a lot of people complain about April. And the understanding we had at the time is there'd be a long weekend in February as well as a long weekend over Easter in April. Just before people come up in public comments and go on and on, just realize that the decision is not being made tonight and that this was thought to be something we should look into. And if you watch our meetings, which are all on YouTube, you will see I was the one who actually said, could we look at March as an option? And that's how this came about. So, since our secretary is not here, I will start. Please come up and announce yourself and your address. And you get 3 minutes. I'll put my hand up at 2.5. And at 3, I will ask you to stop. So our first speaker is Mark Jackson.
Good evening, Mark Jackson, 95 George Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut. Good evening, Mayor Rilling, Dr. Adamowski, Board of Ed members, and guests in the audience. I am here tonight as a parent, a taxpayer, a teacher, and a coach. During the 2018-19 school year, competitive sports were stopped after the fall season on the basis that middle schools were not properly implementing the $20,000 that were allocated for after-school activities. Now that all the schools have implemented the new programs, I implore you to reconsider having competitive sports at the middle school level. Your ideas of clinics have caused a reduction in sports participation. Presently, I went from over 20 students to 10 participating on a good day. You compare Norwalk to surrounding towns when it comes to offerings. Well, here is what other surrounding towns have to offer when it comes to middle school sports, just so you have an idea. New Haven combines 3 or 4 of their schools to compete with one another and surrounding districts. Darien has intramurals, which creates teams to compete against themselves. Greenwich has school-based teams that play one another and they travel. Bridgeport has school-based teams just for basketball season. The benefits of having school sports: preparing kids to compete in high school, promotes positive school culture, team building skills, time management. Sometimes it's the only opportunity for some of the kids because of monetary purposes and home activities. Kids can compete at a minimal fee now with our new program that's in place. This also supports our schools at the high school level as it gets the kids ready at the high school level. I know budget, monetary issues were, transportation issues was a major issue. At the cost of $4,400, you could transport all seasons, all year long, at a price of $1,100 for each school. How could this work? Coaches can arrange the games and officials and transportation, and we can make this work with the current plan that you put in place with the new middle school after school activities. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Christopher.
Sir, I apologize. I actually thought that was the sign-in sheet. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for coming and listening. We appreciate that. Our next speaker is Gloria Niederer.
Hello everyone, Gloria Niederer, 36 Pedham Road, Norwalk, Connecticut. I come before you today to provide evidence that the proposed 2020-2021 calendar is not reflective of most opinions from my children's school, Fox Run Elementary. In May of this year, both myself and my Fox Run PTO co-president, as well as our SGC parent co-chair, were approached by Mr. Barbas to conduct a poll or engage the Fox Run community in a school vacation discussion. There were 2 specific scenarios that we were presented with and specifically asked to engage in discussion polling. Number 1 is the proposed week off in March, a 4-day weekend in February to coincide with President's Day, and a 4-day weekend in April to coincide with Easter, or stay with the traditional calendar, which is a week off in April and a 4-day weekend in February to coincide with President's Day. Now, our data is as follows. Out of 51 responses, 27 preferred the traditional calendar and 24 preferred the new proposal as stated in the poll. You all have written responses from the poll in my statement that was handed out to you, so you can review that at your convenience. I please urge you to do so. So to conclude it, we have 27 people for the status quo, long weekend in February and a week off in April to coincide with Easter. And of those, we have 10 written responses in support, likely people worried about childcare coverage for more vacation days. We have 24 people for the March break, without a significant number writing for or against this opinion. 2 written responses cited March as being a long month for students and staff, and 2 cited the benefit of a week off not coinciding with a holiday or spring sports. The majority of the written responses preferred adding vacation days to the calendar, which calls into question the integrity of the number, 24, that opted for the March break, since this option was only offered in the poll to coincide with a 4-day long weekend in February and April. In light of this, I would urge the board to read the written responses and listen to the community to get a better grasp of the consensus, as any polling numbers offered will be skewed and misrepresentative of opinions. When you look at the data and the input given, save for 2 respondents, no one showed interest in or requested fewer vacation days for the children. In fact, more people wanted to increase time off rather than decrease it. So I cannot understand why this proposal of a week off in March and only 2 3-day weekends in February and April is being presented. My questions are, where are the 4-day weekends from the poll? Why weren't we asked to also poll the scenario that is on this current proposed calendar? There are certainly pros and cons for having a week off in either February, March, or April. Ideally, I would prefer a week off in February and a week off in April, so I could choose what vacation time would best fit my family, so schools could be properly cleaned during flu season and the spreading of germs could cease. My family could get a break in February from a long winter. Before anyone brings up December break doesn't really count because no
3
one
minutes.
really rests. Is that 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Eric Niederer.
Eric Niederer, also of 36 Pedham Road. December break does not count because no one really rests during the holidays, a point that was brought up by many school staff in a discussion during our last SGC meeting, stating lethargy in students in January and February. In fact, there was a strong advocacy for a February break, a week-long February break by staff, because they see the students really struggling in February. As a matter of fact, with the show of hands in that meeting made up of parents and staff, a majority voted for the March break with the 2 4-day weekends, but most, if not all, expressed a preference for a reversion back to the week off in February and April calendar, which would align more with surrounding school districts who provide 3 or 4 weekdays off coinciding with President's Day. This showing at the SGC meeting aligns with the majority of the written responses from the poll that showed a desire for more vacation days for our children and teachers to re-energize and refresh. I'd rather not be trapped with the only week-long vacation during the school year to coincide with a holiday that tends to increase flight and destination costs, which was raised by some of the parents that were there. This scenario provides its own challenges where I or others like myself might entertain the option of pulling my child out completely from school to take a vacation that is more economical. I'm aware that attendance is a concern of the district. Based on the SGC numbers, we understand that's a continuing issue in the district. Therefore, I feel that the option offering the March break and long weekends in February and April is a good compromise, but only if the 4-day long weekends were implemented. I respectfully ask the Board of Education to show good faith and implement a calendar that would benefit our children's well-being and show both the parents and educator community that our opinions matter and that we in the Board of Education can come together for the physical and mental well-being of our children. Our kids need a break. Gloria Niederer and Eric Niederer as well. And since I have some balance of time, I also just want to say, Dr. Adamowski, in the past I've sent you letters after the school year at Fox Run. I haven't had time to do so. I just want to compliment on the record the Fox Run administrators and staff. They did a heck of a job. My son's graduated now from Fox Run with high honors. Which he has improved significantly over the last 3 years at Fox Run. So while I have the balance of time, I just wanted to thank the educators for everything that they did. And it's really a multidisciplinary approach, which I think should be replicated throughout the district, all the way from the administrators through the specials, the teachers, special education, and even we have our nurse here who, when my son would have some behavioral issues that weren't truly of a medical nature, and he'd go to her, she would deal with it appropriately. So anyway, just wanted to give a little shout out to Fox Run. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Jordan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. Mary Jordan, 9 Mott Avenue. First, I want to extend congratulations for all of the new hires, Mrs. Fayoes, Mrs. Parham, Mr. Reynolds, all of the new hires on the board. We celebrate your successes and look forward to working with you. Next year, I do want to comment on the calendar. Next year, there will be a great deal of strain on the families and employees who are not district residents. The April break that Norwalk set during the week of April 6th was set very early. The other districts did not follow suit with Norwalk and set their April break 1 week later. So although I don't know who has children where, roughly 350 NFT employees live in towns where the break is not during the same week as Norwalk next year. Roughly 475 Norwalk employees, NFT employees, that I can count have April break during the same week as Norwalk. Mostly they live in Norwalk. At this point, I don't believe, of course, we can make a change about next year, especially we can't make a change that won't negatively impact one of those groups. There is much stress, however, about what to do with the children and what to do with families during April break next year when the whole of Fairfield County is out of sync. On tonight's board agenda, on the other hand, there is a consideration of a March break during 2020-2021, and for this, there is action to take. And apparently next fall, which is nice to know that there's still some time to think about it. Just slightly less than half of our NFT employees live in Norwalk, and the rest of them will be certain to be out of sync with Norwalk should a March break be decided upon. Many families will be stressed if we decide on that March break. I don't see a March break on any of the neighborhood calendars for 2020, 2021, and because we did not find that other districts followed our lead in the April break this year, I would not expect them to follow our lead for the March break. We did survey our members, and they are not against a March break. They just feel very strongly that we want to be in sync with the neighboring towns to the extent possible. I have more. I'll email it to you so I don't run out of time. Thank you very much for your attention. We know this matters. We know that you know that this matters, and it's an important decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. That concludes public comments, and we will now go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into my report, I just wanted to thank Mr. Niederer for his gracious comments regarding the staff at Fox Run, and want to thank you for your leadership on the SGC, as well as your leadership in the special education parents group. Thank you. So the board has a 250-page agenda packet tonight. So I'm going to be, I don't know how much it weighs, but it's our biggest one this year. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but there are 3 important items that I need to report on tonight. The first is just spectacular as far as we are concerned educationally, and that is the list of college acceptances. You should, actually, you don't have it. I'm going to pass it out to you. There are copies for the public available as well. This is a consolidated list. You may have seen the lists from the individual high schools or high school programs. This is a consolidated list, and remarkably, 97% of the class of 2019 will be attending college or university next year. This is a unduplicated list of 415 colleges and universities. So many of these schools represent multiple students attending them. But they'll all be attended by multiple Norwalk graduates. I think this is a tribute to the staff of our 4 high schools, and particularly to the work of their counselors, and something that is a source of pride for our school system, and something that I hope will attract parents to Norwalk, or to be retained in Norwalk. I'm just going to read a few of the schools from each alphabetical listing. I won't read all 415, but this list goes from Adelphi University to Bennington College to Brandeis to Carnegie Mellon to Connecticut College, Dartmouth, Drexel University, Emory University, Fordham, George Washington University, Harvard, Howard University, Johns Hopkins, Lafayette College, Loyola, Mount Holyoke College, Norwalk Community College, Ohio State University, Purdue, Quinnipiac University, Rutgers, Sarah Lawrence, Spelman, all 17 branches of the State University System of New York. My alma mater, Trinity College, University of Connecticut, University of Delaware, University of Texas, Utica College, Villanova, Wake Forest, Washington University, Xavier College. And Ms. Corbett inquired as to the historically black colleges and universities that would be represented on this list. And there are seven acceptances to those. Cheney University in Pennsylvania, Delaware State, Hampton University, Howard University, Morgan State, North Carolina University, Spelman College. So you can see our class of 2019 is fanning out into the nation, and obviously well prepared for acceptance into some of the top universities in the country and in our state. So congratulations to the class of 2019, and again to all the staff that worked so closely with them to make them ready and qualified to be accepted into these schools.
Yes.
If memory serves me right, if we would look back to these lists 10 to 15 years ago, you'd see a difference in total number of colleges and the quality of the colleges. By far,
Well,
this is really a huge, this is the culmination of 13 years of education. This is the final product, and this is something to be proud of.
I wanted to give you an update on the Montessori program. In fact, you had asked me, remember we had so many questions about this at budget time. There were so many contingencies. Could we get the teachers? Would families register? Could we acquire the furniture in time? All these issues inherent in doing something new that we have not done before. But something that was designated in our strategic operating plan as one of the new choices that we would give Norwalk families. So I have an update. We are planning two. There was also an issue as to whether or not we would be able to do 1 or 2 classes. So at this point, we are planning 2 primary classes. Remember, this Montessori is a multi-age program. The primary classes are ages 3 through 5. We will start the first year, which is next year in August, with 32 seats, or 16 per class, and that will be 8 3-year-olds and 8 4-year-olds. That will leave room for 8 5-year-olds, or 8 5-year-olds to move up the following year, and will leave room for 4 3-year-olds per class, or 8 3-year-olds to join. So this is always in a Montessori classroom. One age is moving out, another is moving in, but students have a 3-year experience. This is part of the culturalization for the new students. They follow a routine because all the other students are into the routine. So we we said that first preference would be given to families in the Brookside neighborhood. Thanks to Ms. Fiev's good work, a community meeting was held in April, and all the seats were immediately filled. The program now has a waiting list. So we are off to a very, very good start there. Furniture was ordered last month, should arrive in July, and we have hired, on your agenda for approval tonight, an experienced, internationally certified Montessori lead teacher. And we are currently in the process of hiring a second teacher. We discovered we had a person within the school system who had Montessori training and certification for paraprofessionals. And we're seeking a second paraprofessional who would be willing to be trained. Work is scheduled for the classrooms this summer to include a dishwasher and other things necessary for family dining, which is a staple of the Montessori program. And we have hired also on your agenda tonight a CSID for Brookside, who is currently an assistant principal in a Montessori school and is capable of evaluating and supporting the Montessori teachers and supervising that program. And then finally, we anticipate that the students will wear primary uniforms, and Ms. Fios is currently working with parents on that now. So we'll have very cute Montessorians running around in their uniforms before we know it. I want to thank Javier Padilla and the talent office staff, Sandra Feos and the Brookside team, Tom Hamilton, our purchasing agent, Karen Bartram, and everyone who has brought this important project to fruition in a relatively short period of time. So thank you.
Dr. Adamowski, can you speak briefly to the decision process that led you to give not just first preference, but to make this essentially a Brookside district school? Because when we give magnet funding to a school, all taxpayers across the city are paying for it. And so there should be some consideration given as to who's allowed to go.
You know, if we could build a magnet school from scratch, you know, we would just open it citywide. When we do that, when we utilize the facilities in a existing neighborhood school, I think we have a responsibility to give first preference to the people who would have attended that school in the first place. And that was the case with Brookside. You remember from Dr. Nee's feasibility study, Brookside was selected because it had the best or most conducive primary classrooms in the system for Montessori, and we needed very few modifications to be made there. So, you know, probably the best parallel we have is Silver Mine prior to its full conversion. It had a strand of dual language in a neighborhood school. This will have a strand, eventually 6 classrooms, hopefully, but it will still be a neighborhood school. You know, I would not be surprised if a future board and superintendent, you know, ended up doing what we did with Silvermine, because I think this program will be as popular and as much of a need, and I think at that point it would provide an opportunity for more families from other neighborhoods.
Heidi, please.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski. I think this is a great opportunity for Norwalk. And I remember a while back when we sat and we had a presentation and we spoke about it, so it's great that it's actually coming, like you mentioned, to fruition. One of my questions, though, Dr. Adamowski, I know you spoke about teachers as well as being being experienced in the Montessori method. As far as paras, now I know that you had mentioned you have one that we found that has the experience, and then the other para that you're looking for, we're looking to train, I assume. Is that what you just mentioned?
Yeah, there's actually certification for paras.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, we're not necessarily calling this a pilot program, but I know down the road, if this is successful, we're hoping to expand it and then add other sections. Is that correct?
Yes, now, we would not add a section next year.
No, I know that.
Or the following year, which would be 2021. It would be 21, 22, when there would be a need to start a lower elementary class, if that was the, direction of the board at that time.
Great, thank you.
Sandra's here, I think. If I'm not mistaken, there were weren't there something didn't you tell me there were 50 or 60 applicants? I mean, it wasn't like, no, okay, there we go. Thank you. So there was huge interest.
A lot of interest,
for,
exactly.
a program that, maybe hadn't been publicized as much as one would have thought, but they got 88 applicants.
I think it's word of mouth. People hear about it, parents hear about it.
That
they're
shows you the
interested.
level of interest.
Yep.
Okay.
And then finally, our favorite subject, the 2020-21 calendar. So I'm going to just circulate for you a packet that has both calendars in it. You'll recall I recommended initially the calendar on the second page here. This was the more traditional calendar that had the 5-day February break and an April break that was attached to the week after, it was the Easter week, the week after Good Friday, which made the break even longer. As Mr. Barbas pointed out, I was asked to take a look at the prospect of a March break, which many private schools in this area have. And so you see that as the top page here. And I think I want to preface these remarks by saying that vacations are primarily an adult issue from our standpoint, but they're a very personal one because they respond completely to one's lifestyle and what one is able to do. We should keep in mind, though, that we have many families in our school system for which this is not an issue. More than a third of our parents are single working parents. And we estimate that about 2/3 of families have both parents who are working outside the home. 50% of our students are in poverty, as mentioned, as measured by the free lunch proxy, right? These are folks that, regardless when the vacation is, they are not going to be going on vacation. They're going to be scrambling to see how they can cover their children when school is not in session. That notwithstanding, our interest in the calendar as educators is one which helps facilitate the achievement of our students. And so there are two variables. One variable is how much instructional time we can get, because our students need that, and they need more of that to close the achievement gap. And then there are certain timing issues, like how much instruction do you have before state testing, and how many complete weeks of school do you have, so students can be in a regular routine and not have it interrupted. Like adults, most students do not react well in terms of their learning to interruptions in that learning cycle. So as we look at the March break, there are some advantages to it. There are three advantages I think we would mention. One is more time between the NWEA end-of-year testing and high-stakes state assessment in May. The second is that it divides the year into thirds, and this lends itself to the current trimester system we have at the elementary level, and would enable an easy transition to trimesters at the middle schools, where it is also our goal to implement parent-teacher conferences twice per year, similar to the elementary level. If you look at the calendar, all that just works very well and more organically, because we're not interrupting a trimester with a break at that point. And then finally, there's more instructional time between the spring break and high-stakes state assessments in May, which would be an advantage to our students. Having said that, I recommended the original calendar to you because I think it was also an incremental improvement over the previous year, and we have been systematically and incrementally trying to improve the calendar each year. So, I think it's our job to make educational recommendations to you. It's your job to place those in the context of the community and the folks you represent. So I think we would be happy with either model. But again, there are some advantages to the March break, and it is certainly worth looking at. The question is whether or not it is too much of a disruption in terms of those families who who are able to take vacations. And then related to that is you had also asked me for information on staff that were enrolled in other school districts. And so we looked, Ms. Jordan has given you some information on the AFT union. This deals more broadly with all of our staff. Just to review this very briefly, we employ 1,986 staff, including the part-time employees. 1,035 of them are certified. That's the teachers and administrators. 52% of our total staff reside in Norwalk, 35% of the certified staff. And we had a difficult time researching those that would live outside the district and have children under 18, but we were able to derive that from the family medical insurance, which is board provided to employees who have one or more children. And so we were able to identify 439 people who live outside the district and have children under 18. 27 of them enroll their children in Norwalk schools, so that reduces the number to 412. It's about 21% of the staff having school-age children enrolled in other school districts, and you can see the top 7 school districts there based upon their residency, Fairfield, Stanford, and Trumbull being the 3 largest. So, if we were to make an argument for calendar alignment, it would be with those top 3 districts. Anyway, that's all the information that I was to provide to you on this. I think you'll probably be discussing this again at your retreat. We have the practice, which is a very good practice now, of setting our calendar a year in advance. And so I think it allows for a more extended period of input, and it allows for you to take a further time to consider that and make a decision and still be way ahead of the curve in terms of giving notice to families so that they can plan ahead. And that's an issue that affects everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think, Mr. Superintendent, you had one announcement. There was so much going on, and especially this hyper-focus on the calendar. While we were talking about Brookside, I think you did want to mention that you have a new appointment.
I'm going to be
You're going to do that
going to be
later?
announcing that after we
Okay.
make the appointments that have a
Okay,
vacancy.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Not yet.
Okay, so now, thank you for your report. Thank you for all that information that we had requested. Obviously, we know the calendar is a very complicated issue. And we, sometimes though, I think we need to relook or consider other options, try to experiment, because just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we should continue doing it that way, which I know, that's controversial in and of itself. But thank you for all that with the calendar. Obviously, the Montessori program is a very exciting start to hear the level of interest there, and that program will be getting off the ground. And then probably really the biggest news was, all these colleges that we're sending students to, I think is a testimony to what we're accomplishing at our public schools, and a record we all should be proud of. We will now move on to actions. We have, as I said, a long agenda, so we put a whole group of things in consent, which is what we typically do, although maybe not quite as many. But I would like a motion to approve the consent calendar as is currently as issued.
Move to approve the
Mr.
consent
Lyons, seconded by Ms. Keys. In terms of discussion, I just would like to mention the things we're covering are personnel appointments of staff, including new teacher hires. I saw someone named Skylar Livingston. I don't know if that is child?
I believe so.
Okay, which is kind of impressive. I don't think he's coming back. I think it's his, one of his children.
Okay.
So kind of a kind of a win for us, but not quite the win we may have wanted. We also are approving field trips, budget transfers. We are going to make Tracy and Kendall schools their community eligibility provision, which is called CEP, which means students there, because of the low income, no one will pay for lunch, which is a federal program which we are trying. We are approving a number of policies, including one that needed a little edit, which I think has been caught. And we are also approving a power purchase agreement for solar panels to be put on Ponus Ridge on the new school once it's completed. So if there are any other discussions, please put up your hand. Otherwise, motion to, yes?
Can't discuss it.
Oh, can't discuss it.
You either remove it, something from consent.
Correct.
Okay, well, okay.
Yeah.
We had a motion for and a second.
Any member can remove an item.
Oh, that's true.
Consent, but
I like
there's
to-
not discussion on the motion.
Yeah, okay,
I'd like to remove an item from consent,
okay,
the trip to the Dominican Republic.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, all in favor of the other items? Okay, unanimous, thank you. Then I guess we can discuss the Dominican Republic?
I'll move to approve the trip to move
Okay.
on for discussion.
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Kimmel? Yes?
My concern is the increased level of the State Department warning for travel to Dominican Republic. I note that it's a very worthy cause incorporating arts and community service. I'm wondering if we could find a similar trip to another destination.
So this trip would not occur till April 2020. I think sometime in January, we would need to assess this situation.
Can we table it until then, or does it need to be approved today?
You can always, point of order, you
Yes?
can always rescind an approval in a future meeting.
If we remember, yeah.
Yeah, we had this issue, it was either in Qatar or
Rwanda.
Jordan
Oh, okay.
for one of the CGS trips. It was approved. We made a decision several months before, based upon a State Department warning, not to go. These things do change. They are also reactive to certain circumstances. You know, we had that bar shooting of one of our great baseball players. So, you know, I think it's wise to just see what the situation is in January.
Okay, could I have a vote? All in favor of approving? Okay, against?
Abstain.
Abstain? Abstain. Okay. Heidi, were you for or against?
I was for.
For, okay, so for the record, Corbett, Lyons, Barbas, Kimmel, and Keys approved, no opposition, and an abstention by Meyer Mitchell. Next, we will go to appointments. We will start with the appointment of the new principal to West Rocks Middle School. Could I have a motion? Ms. Meyer Mitchell, seconded Ms. Keys. Ms. Dr. Adamowski, would you like to say something?
Well, no, I'd like Dr. Costanzo to make an introduction after your motion,
Okay.
or after your vote.
Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Harry, we're skipping. Okay, Frank, would you like to come up, please, and introduce our new appointee?
Great, always exciting to be able to do this. Good evening, Board and Mayor. Adam Reynolds is the recommended candidate for the position of West Rocks Middle School. He is a product of the NPS Leadership Pipeline that was launched in the 2015-2016 school year. Adam joined West Rocks as interim principal in August of 2018. He previously served as the Norwalk High School assistant principal for 6 years. His duties there included ensuring continuous improvement of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. As you know, Reynolds took on a major curriculum office project last year by taking on the high school program of studies, which he authored and presented to this board about a year ago. He also trained middle school principals in the middle school master schedule and helped implement that across the city. Prior to joining Norwalk Public Schools, Adam was an English teacher at Shelton High School for 10 years. During this time, Adam was selected by the superintendent to be part of the Smarter Balance Assessment procurement study. He served as a curriculum leader, a technology champion, a member of the district TVAL committee, and NEASC steering committee. And you may or may not know that Adam is currently a doctoral student at Southern Connecticut State University, where he anticipates graduating with an EDD in 2020 and a superintendent certification 093. He has made a instant impact on West Rocks Middle School. I will hold off on discussing SBAC and NWEA scores, but those scores are pointing upward, and suspension rates are going in the opposite direction. His wife and kids are here tonight to celebrate this moment, and I'd like to call Adam to the podium for just a moment or two to introduce himself to the board.
First, I want to thank the Board of Education, Superintendent. Becky is in the audience, Aurelio, who is the co-chair of our SGC at West Rocks. I want to thank them for their countless hours and support, in addition to the entire West Rocks and Norwalk community at large. I feel very fortunate to be here before you, to be presented with this opportunity to not only continue the work that has been started this year, but to accelerate the learning that's happening at West Rocks. Again, thank you very much. I look forward to not only next year, but years to come in this role. Thank you.
May I?
Yes, Heidi?
Can I just add a comment?
Of course.
Adam, well, you don't have to stand up. It's okay. You can stand like you want to stand. It's great having the support of the whole community and having your family here, which is wonderful to see. But I personally want to thank you for all the work that you've done at Norwalk High School as an assistant principal for a while, and then now moving up to West Rocks. And you have the respect of many. So we really thank you and applaud you for all of your hard work.
Barbara.
I want to add my congratulations. It's been a joy to watch you firsthand through my family's experience at West Rocks. I know you're making huge changes there, and everybody's very excited. So thank you so much for the hard work. I know you've put in a lot of hours. Thank you.
Okay. Well done, Adam. Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to say welcome aboard, and I'm sure you'll take good care of my alma mater.
Thank you, Brenda Byers. Okay, so now we will move on to the appointment of Director of School Improvement, Dr. Adamowski.
Yes, we have an introduction to make after you motion
Sorry, I
and
keep
vote.
on getting this
Yep.
backwards. Could I have a motion, please, for this appointment? Dr. Kimmel, Ms. Keys, all in favor? Unanimous? Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is great to have good news coming like this in regular fashion. So, our second bit of great news, Sandra Feos will succeed the late Patty Foley as the Director of School Improvement for MPS. Arlene Gottesman served in an interim capacity over the course of this year and actually served as interim principal at Norwalk High School for a part of the year serving as interim Director of School Improvement. So kudos to her great work this year. Sandra is the proposed candidate for the position of Director of School Improvement. This role is charged with improving the district's portfolio of schools by leading intervention, developing robust choice schools and programs, assistant principals and administrators working on school improvement plans. Over the past 4 years, Sandra has served as the principal of Brookside Elementary, where she helped lead Brookside's elevation to a Category 2 school in the Connecticut State Accountability Report. During this period, she also successfully completed a Relay Fellowship as a member of Norwalk's first cohort. In fact, the 3 appointees that you're going to hear about tonight have all gone through our leadership pipeline. She has also overseen the assessment system, professional development, and classroom observations. She supports parents and students in understanding the curriculum, progress reports, and district initiatives. Prior to joining Brookside, Sandra was the instructional coach and reading specialist at Norwalk Pathways Academy. There, she worked on curriculum implementation and pacing, developing and leading a formal coaching cycle for new and developing teachers, and building capacity around the effective use of data to drive results. Before joining the Norwalk Public Schools, Sandra worked for the Boston Public Schools. While there, she served as the interim humanities program director and literacy coach for the district's secondary English language arts department. She was also a member of the Common Core Standards Work Group design team and subject work team leader. From 2007 to 2010, she served as the humanities department head and grade 1 team leader for the engineering school in Boston. She began her education career in 1998 as a teacher in Boston and has also worked as a lead teacher and testing coordinator for the High-Tech High Media Arts Center in San Diego. She holds a master's degree in education and a BA from Boston College, also holds the 092 program and was recently accepted into the executive leadership program at the UConn's NEAG School of Education. Sandra is fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean Creole, trilingual. Sandra is here tonight with her husband and children, and I am very excited to be bringing her on in this capacity and would invite her to come up and say a few words to the board.
Thank you, board members, Mayor Rilling, Dr. Adamowski. Thank you, Dr. Costanzo. This has been a very, very emotional time because I have my Brookside family here, I have my family here, and I have all my Relay fellows here. And I'm just proud of what I've been able to do in this short amount of time, and I look forward to many more years here, and I look forward to making you guys proud as well in this new capacity, so thank you.
Okay, Frank?
Do you want to
Yes.
say a word?
Yes.
I can speak.
So I have one
about
more.
Jay.
I have one more announcement to make. This is not on your agenda, but related to the appointments that have been made tonight, and that concerns Mr. James Crouch. James is here today. James, would you stand, please? Is that your family with you? It is. Okay.
My daughter Kayla and my daughter Leah.
Outstanding. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm pleased to announce the appointment of James Crouch as the interim principal of Brookside School, filling the vacancy created by Sandra Fayos as she moves to the Director of School Improvement position. Many of you know Mr. Crouch from his days at Rhoton and Jefferson and currently West Rocks. He has been the go-to guy for this district, and we're asking him to step up once again, this time as principal of Brookside. Ironically, he is also a graduate of the rigorous and prestigious Relay Principals Fellowship. In fact, he and Sandra and Adam were in the same class. He comes to us from having elementary experience in New York State. So he's very, very well qualified for Brookside, and he got more of that at Jefferson, and he As you may be aware, he was there during that year that Jefferson made some significant improvements in reading. He has a reputation for excellent, really incredible relationships with students and their families, and is also an instructional leader that we can be proud of. So, James, thanks for stepping up, and we look forward to your term at Brookside, and wish you the very best.
Can somebody please pinch me, because I don't know if this is real right now. But honestly, thank you very much, board members, Dr. Adamowski, Mayor Rilling. It's to be selected in this capacity, in this role. I look forward to meeting my 400 eager achievers at Brookside on July 1st. I plan to do my best. I'm dedicated 100%, and you have my commitment to make sure that I do whatever I can to make sure those children are successful. So thank you once again. And before I leave, I just want to say that this moment is surreal, that I get an opportunity to spend it with my fellow relay companions, Adam, Jane, Karen, and Sandra. We talked about this in Philadelphia, and now it's come full circle into fruition. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Such a great example tonight of leadership development in our school system.
I just want to
all
say,
the assets we have.
I just want to say it's really thrilling. This is the good part of being on the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
I knew Mr. Crouch when he started at Norwalk Public Schools, and he was an integral member of my family, not only because my son went to Rhoden, but we hosted these Chinese exchange teachers, and he looked after them, and he even went to the airport to see one of them off at 5 a.m. on July 4th. So this guy is a real trooper. Sandra, I know you know him, but you really are leaving your school in very good hands. So it's just a really exciting moment, and it makes being a board member worth it. So thank you, everybody. And a testimony to Dr. Adamowski's foresight in developing the relay program and implementing it. We've jumped around a little bit in actions. We'll go back now. If Tom is here, we will go to the approval of the 1920 operating budget reconciliation and the final budget. So, Tom, the floor is yours.
So Tom is going to have a very brief, that's with a capital B, presentation, which is simply reviews where we are in the final reconciliation. This has all been reviewed by the Finance Committee previously.
Okay, I'm going to actually just hand out the few pages of the presentation, so if you can take one copy of the first one, and then there's also one second sheet, which I'll discuss in a moment as well.
Sarah's on today.
So this is the culmination of the budget process, and you know, I think as budget processes go, this one was you know, went more smoothly perhaps than some others, and I think the first slide of the package that I'm handing around probably helps explain why it did go as smoothly as it is, or as it did. The first slide really is just a highlight of the budget compromise that you'll recall that was reached between the Board of Education and Mayor Rilling, and that compromise forms the basis of the final budget and the budget reconciliation up before you tonight. So just to reiterate what was in that budget compromise, essentially we started with a base budget with a 3% increase. We added to it one-time expenses that were identified in the Board of Education budget, totaling just shy of $2.3 million, and that provided a total budget requested increase of just under $8 million, which brings the final approved budget to the Board of Education for 1920 of $198,491,000. In addition, the third element of this budget compromise was that the city would permit the Board of Education to carry over up to 1% of any surplus that is generated in the current fiscal year of $1.9 million. The second page I handed out was actually an itemization of that $1.9 million. We did get a request from Barbara asking for some detail on that, so we provided you with the itemization. You'll see that most of the turnback dollars are in the wage area, which is attributable to vacancies, as well as any delays there may have been in filling positions, and the salary differential between positions that turned over between when the budget was put together and when those positions were filled. So there was some salary savings there. So that was the bulk of the savings, and then there are a number of other items in supply accounts and other areas on this list as well. So in any event, with that $1.9 million of anticipated carryover, it brings the total available budget to the Board of Ed for 1920 of $200,396,000. So the budget increase, the base budget increase prior to the carryover funds represents an increase of 4.2%, and the second slide of the handout that I handed out breaks down those expenses by the major objects of expenditures, salaries, employee benefits, and so forth, so that you can see where the changes in the budget are for next year. And again, the total increase represents is 4.2%. Moving on, and I believe we provided in the backup material that was included with the agenda a reconciliation. There was as part of the compromise between the city and the Board of Education, did require that we make reductions totaling $1.8 million to the budget that you approved in January. And so the slide that I've included here in the package is the itemization of where that $1.8 million was derived. And you'll notice that 74% of the reductions, or $1,325,000, is from the central office departments, and $462,000 is from the school budgets. So the $462,000 represents 26% of the total reduction of approximately $1.8 million. It also represents about 0.5% of the student-based budgets. So the numbers that went out to the schools and the SGCs to work with already had incorporated that 0.5% reduction. So the budgets that the schools have adopted and are presented as part of the final budget document in your package tonight includes that $462,000 reduction. So there's no additional reduction that has to be made to any school budgets to meet our budget. The next two pages on this slide is an itemization of the $1.8 million by department or school, and also other adjustments made between the January budget and the final approved budget. So there's a variety of corrections and a variety of other items that were moved from one place to another. For instance, in the intervening period, we have moved some additional expenses along with the money to the school budgets for things like security, non-certified substitute expenses, telephone expenses, and copier expenses have all been moved to the student-based budgets, because we find that it puts, our principals are becoming very interested in how their budgets are being spent, and we're finding that if we give them responsibility, that they are identifying ways to save money so that they can use those monies that they save for other items that they may be interested in. So we think that's a good strategy to continue to pursue. The Presentation also includes a list of the budget goals. I'm not going to go over them now. You're all well familiar with them, but all of the budget goals that were originally laid out in our budget, with the exception of the move to the healthier high school start time, which was deferred for 1 year, all of the other budget goals that were incorporated into our original budget submission are funded in this final approved budget. And finally, the last slide I've provided to you is a look at the per student allocations. These numbers form the basis of the student-based budgets, so you can see that we are still in a position, or I should say, we've continued last year for the first time. We sort of normalized the amount of money we're providing to the high school level, the middle school level, and the elementary school level, and you'll see that we continue that for the new fiscal year, with the high schools receiving the highest per pupil allocation at $8,848, the middle schools at $8,691, and the elementary schools at $8,287. So the full budget document obviously was in your package. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. But at this point, we're obviously happy that the budget process is now more or less concluded at this point after your final vote tonight.
Just a comment.
Yes, Bruce, sorry.
Yeah, to be honest with you, going into the budget season, I had no idea we'd be able to pull this off. The original budget proposal, which we okayed last July, was probably beyond what the city could afford to pay up front. So what I basically want to do is commend Dr. Adamowski and Mayor Rilling for coming up with what probably is one of the more creative and collaborative approaches to an operating budget that I've ever seen. And this was my 20th operating budget. And to be honest with you, I had no idea you'd come up with such interesting proposals. And I'm not talking about creative in the negative sense, such as creative accounting. They had a problem in front of them, and they worked together to solve it in a way that enables the school system to move ahead with its strategic operating plan. And that was the key. And we're able to do that. And I hope we set an example going forward next year and years following, that we will continue to work together to solve these budgetary problems that the city faces, because this was the best in memory. So thank you, Mayor Rilling, and thank you, Dr. Adamowski.
Okay, Barbara.
I want to reinforce Dr. Kimmel's sentiments. This is the first year since my children were entered kindergarten that I haven't had to rally the troops, protest. This is a real sign that Norwalk is finally really on the right path to working together in partnership. And I want to thank Tom Hamilton, who carried a lot of weight on his shoulders, but I was able to relax knowing that you were at the helm and would find a creative compromise. So thank you very much, Mr. Rilling, Mayor Rilling, for getting us to this point, and to Dr. Adamowski as well. Thank you.
Mayor Rilling.
Sorry. We're all tripping over our tongues today.
You know, I think everybody here at the table, everybody out there, wants to make sure that we do everything we can to provide a world-class education for our children. And I want to thank Dr. Adamowski, because he was very creative in presenting things that we could say, hey, look, this makes a lot of sense. I want to thank him for also letting Tom step in. As you know, we lost our chief financial officer at a very critical time. We have since found a replacement. But Tom sat at the table with us, and not once did I ever feel that he was slanting either way. He was very pragmatic. It was just like, here's what we can do, and here's what this means, here's what that means. And some people were saying, is there a conflict of interest? And knowing Tom and knowing his character and his honesty and integrity, I felt very comfortable. So, and thank you, Dr. Adamowski, thank you, Tom, and other members of the board who have to weigh in on all this.
And thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we're all very
I just-
excited.
one-
Julie,
one
sorry.
piece. That's okay. So, unlike Dr. Kimmel, who's 20 budget cycles in, this was my second budget cycle in, and after our first budget cycle, I was very nervous going into budget cycle number 2. So, I do also want to commend Mayor Rilling, Brian Meek, the chair of the Finance Committee, Dr. Adamowski, Tom, Kristen, your whole team, as well as Common Council and BET for also being willing to support the compromise that was developed. I also think it's important that, and I appreciate, Tom, your response to my question earlier via email about the training that the SGCs have received as well. And I think what we saw during the workshop meeting, the most recent workshop meeting where SGC co-chairs and principals came and talked about their growth, how oftentimes the budget cycle was recommended, or the recognition and ownership that SGC chairs and principals have taken over their budgets has come such a long way since the SGCs first were enacted just a few years ago. And so I want to commend in advance the SGC co-chairs, the entire SGCs, as well as the principals for really taking ownership of an entirely new area of work for them to understand how to use this money effectively. And moving forward, I look forward to seeing future ways that the city and the school district can work together to collaborate, to really think about how we can streamline expenses to make sure that we're using all taxpayer dollars effectively and wisely in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve?
The budget?
Mr. Lyons and Ms. Corbett seconds. All in favor? All in favor, you can join us here if you'd like. This is approving the budget.
All in.
So unanimously in favor. Thank you, Tom. But don't leave, because the next action is approval of the food service management company contract for the 1920 school year. I will say I'm on the wellness committee that's chaired by Lisa Lenskol. We went through this what do you want to call it, exercise last year.
Right.
And in the end, we decided to stick with our food service provider at the time, Woodson's, and we had another year with them. But we decided to put this out for bid again this year. Last year, our hand was kind of forced because of a new contract with our food service workers. But this year, we thought we weren't where we wanted to be, and so we wanted to consider options, and so we did. And I think Tom will tell us a little bit about it. And I know we do have a representative from our new food service provider here in the audience. But Tom, I'll let you make the big news.
Sure. So, I think Mr. Barbas did explain basically we went through a new RFP process this year, despite having gone through one last year. And as the board knows, the strategic operating plan identifies making fundamental changes to our food service operations, both in terms of the quality of the food, the freshness of the food, the appeal of the food for our students, and the healthiness of the food for our students, as well as making improvements to the dining environment and making it a less institutionalized dining environment, more of a family dining environment, are very high priorities for the board. They're identified specifically in the strategic operating plan. And so we felt that essentially, though the district has made significant progress over the last 3 years, we think there is still a great deal more work to be done there, and we think that a new partner coming in, a new food service management company coming in, is going to inject new blood and new life into that transformation that we are attempting to undertake in food service. So the district did put out an RFP. We received 4 responses to that RFP. We had a fairly large panel of reviewers, including the chair of the board was on the interview panel, myself, Lisa Lenskold, I don't know if Lisa is here. I thought
No,
she
I
was
don't
here.
think
No, okay, Lisa is not here. But Lisa was integral, obviously, to the work here. Myself, we had two principals, Teresa Rangel and Zakia Baker, Karen Bartron, Jill Kress, who works in food service for the district. We also had a parent and a student on this committee. So I think we had a very robust committee that reviewed the proposals, interviewed all the proposers, and ultimately has made a recommendation to go forward with Chartwell's. Chartwell's is, I think it's fair to say, one of the preeminent food service companies in this space working in the state of Connecticut. They provide services presently to a number of our neighboring school districts, Stamford, Wilton, I believe Westport, and others, as well as districts throughout the state. They, of all the proposers, provided the most comprehensive roadmap of how to get from where we are now to scratch cooking, which is where we're trying to go. And they provided a 5-year plan, a very detailed plan of how to get there. And they come to the table with a very experienced and robust team, both from a management standpoint and from a culinary standpoint. They understand student dining, and they understand where the district is seeking to go. So the ratings that the committee developed and the evaluations of these proposals really put Chartwell's head and shoulders above the other proposers, and so we're happy to be able to recommend them. I would point out that in terms of the administration and management fee that Chartwell's proposed, their fee is actually $37,000 less per year than our incumbent food service management company's fee. So we think it makes sense as well from a financial standpoint. The contract itself is in the process of being finalized through the state of Connecticut. The state plays a pretty significant role in having to approve these contracts. We expect that to be done shortly, so we are requesting your authorization to allow the superintendent to execute that contract for the year starting July 1st. I don't know if there's any questions. Happy to try to answer them, and Lucas from Chartwell's is here. I don't know if, did you want to say a few words, or do you want to just, if there's any questions, we do have a representative from Chartwell's here to answer any questions that you might have of Chartwell's.
Barbara, did you?
I actually don't have a question. I'm just very enthusiastic. I want to thank the team at Whitson's for the hard work they put into all the efforts they made to have us be able to do the Breakfast on the Go program, and recently they did the food rescue. They've done a lot to try and meet our needs as a district, and we really appreciate that. And I'm very excited about this choice of Chartwell's because I've heard wonderful things from other districts. So we're looking forward to that partnership too, and hoping that, are we going to be able to transition smoothly in the summer food service?
Yes, they are actively working behind the scenes now to be up and running for the summer feeding program, and we, obviously with any transition, I'm not going to say there aren't any bumps along the way, but they understand that program starts July 1st and are prepared to step in and have that program up and running.
And a constituent asked, and I didn't know the answer, will we stay with My School Bucks for our payment for food service, or will...
Yes, that is our system. So at this point, I'm not saying that at some point in the future, we'll obviously take input from Chartwell's, but our point of sale system stays the same that we currently have, and the My School Bucks is attached to our point of sale system. They're sort of co-aligned systems, if you will. Now, Chartwell's may come in and may make some recommendations, but they would be for implementation somewhere down the road.
That's great. And the last question is, this spring we were able to implement food rescue at one of our schools. Is that something we could roll out district-wide? It's food rescue. So food from the school lunch program that isn't used is packaged and taken to nonprofits that need it to serve their folks. Currently, it was packaged at Brian McMahon and delivered to the Malta House, but the hope was to have it available to other venues. Food rescue provides the volunteers to take it. It's just that our staff would need to package it and prepare it for them.
Yeah, it's not something that we specifically discussed, but
Okay.
that's what we want.
If we could put it on the radar, that
We'll
would be great.
put that is not one we talked about, but we will, we'll have that
I
discussion.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot to do to get up to
Of course.
running, so.
Not a top priority, but a priority.
I will say I was a board member who participated in the reviews, and Chartwell's really was head and shoulders, I think, above the competition, and had a really compelling product, and that's the committee was unanimously in favor. So if I could have a motion, we didn't vote yet, right? Bruce, Heidi, all in favor? And Chartwell's is our new food services management group. Next, approval of the digital literacy curriculum for grades K through 8. I know Brenda was here earlier.
She's there.
She's here.
Brenda, there she is. Sorry.
Brenda, would you come up if there are some questions, please?
Good evening.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve, or
Motion to approve.
Dr. Kimmel, second? Ms. Keys? Questions? Dr. Kimmel?
Just a minute for background. As you probably know, digital literacy is something that's going to be critical for the future of our school system, and we're moving ahead with a plan to introduce a program that ultimately will be integrated into everything we do. Fortunately, there are companies out there that have the whole package curriculum, and it's not expensive. We're asking for $64,000, which would cover everything. It's a scope and sequence from K through 8 or K through 12. I see.
K through 8.
K through 8, and hopefully in the future, every one of our 8th graders will graduate with the skills necessary to not only succeed in high school and college, but to succeed in life with the digital skills necessary for the 21st century. So that's the background.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Brenda? Okay, if not, all in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes actions. We will now move forward with information reports. The first topic is first read of personnel policies. Ms. Keys?
Yep, I'm going to start it, and then I'm going to have Dr. Costanzo kind of delve in a little bit further on the first read. We looked at this back in May, and the policies, we're finishing up, no, I shouldn't say finishing up, we're still working on many of our K policies, but I think we're definitely have taken a chunk out of it and continuing to move along. But the first one we're going to discuss is personnel leaves, which is policy 4152.6. FMLA. We're going to look at the second version, which is 4152, I'm sorry, I think I might have the wrong number there. I think I have the wrong one. I can go back to that. The next one is affirmative action, which is 4111.2. Smoking, drinking, use of drugs on school premises, which is policy 4118.231.
And, right, that's right. Those are the three policies before the board tonight as a first read. The second FMLA CABE model policy is our recommended first read for the board tonight. We have the affirmative action policy as well, and the smoking, drinking, and use of drugs on school premises policy. You might remember a couple of years ago that we passed a policy like this for our students. So this policy is a revised policy that CABE is recommending that we update. What you won't notice in here that we'll need to make a correction on is just to include for smoking, vaping or electronic smoking. Everything else that you see in the FMLA policy and the affirmative action policy are CABE recommendations. There are several updated legal references that have been updated at the bottom of each of the policies, and they're fairly straightforward. We have these four as a first read. We'll approve these when we return at our first August business meeting. And a little bit later tonight, we'll have a chance to approve at the board level for other policies that all fall under community relations. Which, are we doing that as well after this? We can do both sets now? Okay. So, so just to take a step back, the CABE policy audit was recommended about 1.5 years ago. The majority of the policy manual in Norwalk was written in 1985 and 1986, about 3/4 of it. And the district has only averaged about 3 to 5 revised policies per year, making this manual quite outdated. And so the CABE policy recommendation included creating 18 new policies that don't exist, that are mandated by state law. We have passed through this board 17 of 18. We'll do the final policy in the fall of next year. We're in phase 2 of this CABE policy audit, of which we have focused this year on 35 policies, 17 of which are recommended for updates. And I should also mention that as a board, you have approved several other policies not related to the CABE policy audit: summer school, NPS graduation requirements, and P-TECH Norwalk graduation requirements, all approved this year. Do you have any questions on the first read policies or the community relations policies, which have been before the board last month and are for adoption?
There was a typo in one of the community relations, not just the one that we caught with about the directory, where it should have read without, but it read.
Yes.
There was that, but there's another typo. It says apart, and it should just say apart.
Okay. If you could point that out to us.
Yeah, I have it here. It's 1330B is where that apart one is. And the other, I think you already know about.
Yes, we saw your email today. CABE is generally fairly flawless, but they do on occasion have an error. And the process is actually that we make these adjustments and then we mail them back to CABE hard copy. And then they give us an approval, and then they're officially adopted into our manual. Okay. We're planning on updating our policy manuals and distributing them to all administrators at the administrators retreat on August 15th and 16th. So those manuals will incorporate a couple of dozen of new or revised policies, which are much needed.
Yes.
But thank you for catching that error.
Do we have a master list anywhere of all the reports and things that we are supposed to be getting on an annual basis that are prescribed by the policy manual? Because when I was reading it recently, I was like, oh, we didn't actually get that one. So, God bless you.
We do. As members of CABE, we get a quarterly newsletter, and it includes all recommended policy revisions or replacements. That happens on an ongoing basis in addition to the CABE audit.
That's actually not what I meant, but thank you. What I meant was, have we reviewed all of our Norwalk policies and made a list of all the reports that we're required to make?
When you say reports, I'm not sure I understand.
So some of our policies say we shall report on the safety plan, we shall report, and those are supposed to be disseminated to the board on an annual basis. And I'm not sure that has happened. So that was one that popped up for me, but I'm wondering if we need to go through and just make a checklist of everything that we're supposed to be looking at on an annual basis.
Mike, can I interject?
Yes.
For a minute? Barbara, I know, I understand that, but I know as a priority, which we looked at quite a while ago, the key mandated policies, I mean, that's what we've really been focusing on for at least the past year. So, I mean, that's something that.
But I'm talking about the policies we've already voted, that are our policies.
Right.
We have some that say a report shall be issued to the board of X, and they haven't been. So what I'm saying is, could we maybe over the summer review the policy books for those things that are supposed to be reported on annually. That's all. And then I just had one other question on 4252.6. I note that medical leave, if both spouses are teachers, they only get 12 weeks total between the two of them, which doesn't seem entirely fair, because if one person is a teacher and the other person works in another company, they could in fact do kind of a tag team where one took 12 weeks and took care of the person and the next person took 12 weeks. But if you're both teachers in our district, you're penalized.
Well, if you notice, in the latter of the two FMLA policies, there's a sentence that explains that FMLA does not affect any federal or state law prohibiting discrimination or supersede any state or local law or collective bargaining agreement. So I think we need to reference the Federation contract in instances like that. That would actually supersede the FMLA policy.
Okay.
Julie,
yeah.
you kind of want to speak before, and then you want to interject, so.
Right,
please.
thank you. So I think, because that was also concerning to me when we first looked at this. So first, I think it's important that piece was part of regulations, which we're not approving tonight, which would be developed as procedure by the district at a later time. So I do think it's important to call it out as something to look at, and I do think is concerning, even though it is allowable by law, that if you have a married couple, that you can, it's essentially a marriage penalty. And so it's allowable by law. If we believe that's appropriate or not is a separate piece. I personally have an issue with it. But I also think it's important to note that passing FMLA as a policy tonight, we also know the state law has just is very quickly changing, and I think it's going to be enacted in 2020 or 2021. And so knowing that as soon as the state law changes, that will also impact these pieces. And so I think it's an important issue to call out, but it doesn't actually impact the policy tonight.
Right,
Well,
so-
we're not voting on this tonight anyway, it's just a read.
Correct.
So our collective bargaining agreement with the NFT goes far beyond the FMLA rules. I think there's about 7 pages of it that would exceed what would be in the FMLA. I think that will supersede and really make moot the need for any regulations. We're just going to follow the negotiated contract or whatever comes out of the next round of negotiations.
Sarah, please.
On the alcohol, drugs, and tobacco policy, in the 5th paragraph, the bottom paragraph in the first alcohol and drugs section there, it says may be suspended or terminated at the discretion of the board. And I was just thinking that often in the public there's confusion about what's the responsibility of the Board of Education and what's the responsibility of administrators or their designees, and so we might want to take a look at that language.
Okay. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that first read. A lot for you to do, Frank.
Thanks.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to monthly financial report. Just have no time if you want to just give us a quickie.
Okay, I guess very quickly, we're 92% of the way through the fiscal year, 90% through the school year. We've spent approximately 80% of the budget, but there are a number of items that will bring this, fiscal year to a close pretty much on budget. The items still to hit, obviously, there's still a bit more payroll between now and June 30th, and the most significant thing yet is the summer pays have not hit. The majority of our teachers do elect to be paid over 12 months, even though they're, done working before July 1st. So that expense will be booked shortly after July 1st. We also have the remainder of the employee benefit expenses. You'll see we're at about 75% expended on benefits, so we expect to fully expend the benefits budget Nothing really new to report, you know, in the 300 series of accounts. We do reflect that there's some reduction compared to prior year in the 330 account, which is other professional services, which is primarily related to special education. So those expenses at the same time last year are about 13%, are running about 13% below where they were at the same time last year. Likewise, on the out-of-district tuition, we're running about 6% below where we were last year. So we do expect a bit of savings there. And the other accounts are pretty much running on budget where we would expect, the supply accounts and equipment accounts and other accounts. Are there any other questions?
No, I don't think.
Just as a comment, this is the second year in a row we've begun to see the payoff for the SPED transformation plan, and 6% is rather steep, and I'm very pleased. I'd be interested to know, it's not important, no rush, the actual savings over the last couple of years, net savings, because I know we've been moving money into special ed district-wide. So if we can get some kind of update in the near future, perhaps at our retreat, on the net savings for the SPED turnaround, I think that would be interesting.
Sure. I think we had done that, 6 months ago, and we can update that after we, have closed the year. We'll update that this summer, but, there's certainly savings in the out-of-district tuition, the professional services, and it's offset partially by increased cost of building the programs in-house for staffing, but there are savings, certainly.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, following up on Bruce's point there, that, we were there at the very beginning when we asked for that special fund. The mayor was very supportive of our effort to get that fund, and due to a lot of hard effort by Dr. Adamowski, by the SPED staff, by finance, we turned that appropriation into the exact success that we hoped we would do with it. We built up the internal functions to a much better state than they had been. We're saving a lot of money on outplacements. It was a good model of a successful implementation of a good idea.
Okay.
Can I just
Great.
build on that?
Yes, Barbara?
Just something for the board to consider for the next legislative session. This session, there were 6 bills introduced to lower the threshold at which we receive reimbursement for excess cost grant, which is when a student is outplaced. We get reimbursed after they reach 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure, which is currently 17, 18. And Will Haskell introduced one to make it 2 times the per pupil expenditure, which would make the decision point of whether to outplace or in-place a lot easier for the district and a lot less painful for families. So I think it would be great if we could write a letter in the fall in support of any bills that are submitted to that extent. That's all.
You may be aware there was a proposal from the school. I know you follow the school finance project as I do. And there was a proposal submitted by them, which essentially created an insurance fund.
Yes.
Right? I thought that was the most well thought out proposal. It was modeled after what several other states do very successfully. That gained no traction, primarily lack of support from school systems, right? And, there's a very difficult balance here, because if you reimburse too much, you're incenting a school district to send children out, as opposed to meet their needs in the least restrictive environments. And if you reimburse too little, a school district can't do either one. Can't provide the service in-house and can't. So this is a very interesting and sensitive issue, and I hope we can get involved in it in terms of some advocacy on the part of the district.
I think it's compelling. I noted at a recent meeting that Stratford said that 50% of their budget was spent on special needs, and
50, yeah.
Yeah, 50. And the
3 of the bills that were submitted this session were actually to favor communities under 2,000 students because they can't create the infrastructure and the programs for themselves.
Right.
So, but I would suggest that those bills overlook Norwalk and Norwalk's needs, and we should probably advocate against that approach.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We will now move on to committee and representative reports. Julie, would you like to begin?
Sure. So I will report on the school counseling redesign committee. And so that committee, we've had several meetings over the last couple of months. And the next big steps are planning a number of focus groups, some of which are starting now with, especially looking at school counselors. I believe that's happening on Friday. Thursday. Thank you. That's what I meant when I looked at my calendar and saw it was 2 days away. Thursday. And then there are going to be a number of other focus groups as well, looking at current students, middle and high school students, as well as alumni, former students, especially since students are home for the summer. And also will be included would be parents, in both at the middle school level as well at the high school level. And then in the fall, there would be a survey that goes out that would be translated into English, Spanish, and Creole. And then the other big piece of this work that's upcoming is there will be 3 days of professional development specifically for school counselors in August. And the counselors that have been on the committee have really reiterated that this is one of the first times they've had professional development and professional learning opportunities specifically for school counselors in their recollection of history in Norwalk. And so that's a really exciting development that those counselors will actually be getting what they need versus sitting through PD that may or may not be relevant to them. So the committee is taking a little bit of a break over the summer, but then we'll start up again in the fall to start moving towards recommendations.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Negotiations, we completed negotiations with the technicians union. The union has approved the negotiated settlement, and that will come to the board for a final vote. We have begun the negotiations with what's called bump and runs with nurses and ESG unions, which is basically just initial meetings to start scheduling actual meetings. And the negotiations with NASA and the NFT will literally be starting up in the next couple of days. The techs, nurses, ESG, all of the non-certified contracts are actually controlled by MIRA, which is the Municipal Employees Relations Act, which has sort of loosey-goosey timelines on it. The teachers and administrators' contracts, however, have to follow mandatory deadlines set by the state. You have to reach a deal or you go to mediation, then you must go to arbitration in a certain time frame. So those will be completed within a few months, given the mandatory timeline. So committee's going to be very busy.
Okay. Sarah.
The SPED ad hoc committee was scheduled to meet this Thursday, but we're actually going to meet next Thursday, partially because some of our parent members will be away. And we'll update everyone after that.
Okay. Great. So I will, just on facilities, we did move up our meeting because we needed to get everything into the state on our EDO 49 applications. And so that's primarily the Jefferson project. We hadn't finalized that. As everyone, I think, now knows, we are delayed yet again on the Columbus at Ely project. And, we're just going to have to wait. We are still waiting for DEP. We were supposed to get that approval by June 30th. I don't believe we've gotten it yet. And it's not clear why it's taken so long. And then it will have to go to the National Park Service. So, we're just waiting, just trying to be patient here. We really decided we can't really proceed with the Columbus, old Columbus School project until Columbus at Ely is started, because that's where those kids are going to go. So there were some debate as to whether that should be a renovation as new or as a new building. The state, which will be paying for roughly 25% of that project, has asserted that they will be making the final decision as to what makes the most sense. So while there was a big debate in town, that decision has been taken out of our hands. The Ponus STEAM School, which will be K-8, is moving along very nicely. We had a topping ceremony, and that's just cruising along and should meet our deadlines. And they'll be doing work in the main building over the summer, and this building should, be in on time. Everything is according to schedule. So I think on facilities, we did also at our meeting get a review of all the ongoing projects. There's a lot of stuff happening this summer. Bill Hodel, I'm sure, will not be going on summer vacation because there's so much going on. Second hat I wear is I'm on the Wellness Committee. As we mentioned, this approved, vetted the food service providers and then chose Chartwell's. In other news, which is kind of disappointing, the Connecticut Food Bank has decided to no longer be providing these weekend backpacks. So for 384 of our students at 11 different elementary schools, they were being provided these non-perishable backpacks filled with non-perishable food that a child could actually open and access themselves. Connecticut Food Bank is deciding they want to take a different approach, and they want to have these these mobile food pantries, which I guess there's been some question as to how effective these are, but anyway, this is what they've decided to do. These children who were getting these benefits, the point person at each of our elementary schools was different by school. So in one place it was a social worker, another school was the principal, and so forth. But the chair of the Wellness Committee, Lisa Lenskol, and Frank Costanzo have been working together to make sure that whoever the point person was at each school now knows about this, and we are working with a range of partners, including the United Way, filling in the blanks, the health department, and other community partners to figure out what's the best way to proceed here. But there will be more of these mobile food pantries than there have been. These pantries they operate frequently on Saturdays. Last month they served over 200 families and distributed over 2,000 pounds of food. At Rowayton and Ponus, and also at Grassroots Tennis and Odyssey, Filling in the Blanks, which is another community organization, they did provide 449 weekend food bags, and they will continue to do so, as well as trying to help with the other schools. And anyway, so there's a lot of work going on in this area. It is complicated. Obviously, there is a real need, but it is not a layup as to how it will get resolved. But just so everyone knows, this is ongoing. It wasn't our choice, and it's really out of our hands, and we're trying to help. But I think the situation is as under control as it can be, but it is a little disquieting.
Can I make an addition to that about filling in the blanks?
Okay.
Just to appeal to the community, if anyone in the room has connections to some of the corporations based here in Norwalk that might be willing to donate to filling in the blanks so that they can expand their backpack program and take over from what the Connecticut Food Bank was doing, that would be extremely helpful. So please, I have Tina's contact information if you have any leads. Thank you.
Heidi.
Thank you. I want to personally thank Julie Corbett for chairing our last policy committee meeting. Unfortunately, I had a retirement party and I wasn't able to chair, but I'm really thrilled with the progress that we've had in policy. And thank you again, Julie, because we want to keep the momentum going, and we have a lot of policies that we still need to pass through and have a first read and then action on. So there's a lot of work ahead, and I appreciate Julie stepping up and sharing during that time. In addition to that, delayed start times, we're moving, Dr. Adamowski can add in as well, but we've had some subgroups and some presentations, and the committee will be presenting to the full board in October. So we're September. I apologize. Originally it was October. I'm sorry.
Actually, counseling has the October slot.
Yeah, September. So that will happen in September. And do you want me to start with board member announcements? Or you're going to go around after?
Well, we'll go around.
Okay.
Dr. Kimball?
I would just kill two birds with one stone, so to speak.
I'm insulted, Heidi. I will never speak with you
It's my
again.
birthday, don't forget.
That's right. That's okay. Fair enough. Before earlier this evening, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee met, and we discussed the GNT, some GNT scheduling issues for next year, different approaches that middle schools are taking. And I should add, we've probably discussed, as promised last year, the GNT reforms at almost every single one of our curriculum meetings. We've been monitoring what's going on. And it's interesting, following it along. We also discussed an overview of the proposed K-5 literacy plan and the Summer Academy update, as well as we had a brief but interesting discussion of math instruction and differentiating math. It was a fruitful meeting, and I would say it's been a fruitful year for the committee.
Good to hear. Barbara?
Last September, when Norwalk Acts held its convening around discussions of what it takes to have a healthy child in Norwalk, one of the things that emerged from the conversation is the difficulty of walkability in the community. And I was invited to attend the pedestrian committee, which is a subcommittee of the Bike Walk Commission. And out of that evolved a partnership with several departments, the health department taking the lead, to do a survey of our community in the area 1 mile radius from all of our elementary schools, where we can identify blocks that either do not have a sidewalk or need a sidewalk repair, and get that information to the department so that they can start taking that into account in their budget process. So I'm excited that we can start talking about a larger connectivity and walkability for our students. I'm also excited to welcome Jennifer Barahone to the Norwalk Acts as their new CEO, and looking forward to meeting with her next week to talk about initiatives that she sees as priority and seeing how we can partner with the Norwalk Public Schools.
All right. Bruce, committee, or whatever it's called.
Announcements.
Announcements. Board member announcements, sorry.
Those were
Do you have board member announcements?
Bruce, your turn.
anything exciting?
Yeah, I finished the Commonwealth Saga, the Boy Trilogy, and the Chronicle of the Fallers, almost 6,000 pages, at the recommendation of Mr. Lyons. And it was well worth it. Thank you. Now I can devote more time to board business.
Well, I can thank Mr. Lyons. He gave me the first book, but I haven't had time to read it.
Once you read
can't
it,
put
you
it
get
down.
sucked in. Meek read all
Hey, how's your
7
back?
of them too.
How's your back?
It's all right.
I'm not going to say on my.
Ms. Keys, board member announcement?
I'll start with the retirement celebration. Dr. Adamowski, myself, and Mike Barbas. I think Brenda was there as well, some representatives from central office. And I just want to give a big shout out to our retirees. They've put so much time and effort. Many have been with us over 20 years. And, you know, we value and appreciate all the hard work they've done as teaching staff for Norwalk Public Schools. We know what a tough job it is and what an impact you make on our children and our students' lives. So we appreciate everything you've done. It's almost bittersweet. I know Mike and I know many of the retirees, and you know, it's just hard. I think when you see them move on, you're happy and they're thrilled. But it's also a bittersweet moment because they leave lasting memories for staff in their schools, as well as the students that they've taught for many, many years. So thank you so much for all the retirees. Again, we appreciate everything that you've done for many, many years. In addition to that, Brian McMahon High School, I was one of the board members that attended, and knock on wood, there was no rain that night, so we were thankful for that. But it was a beautiful night, and it was really a stunning celebration. And the mayor's not here, but his granddaughter graduated, so I know, my daughter graduated last year, so I know that feeling when you have a child or a grandchild graduate, and it really brings fond memories, and I know for him it was a very, very special moment. In addition to that, I was also at West Rocks, and I was also the speaker there, and Yvette, I know you and I were there as well, and again, that was another, to see these middle school kids moving on is just, you know, heart-wrenching. It's exciting again, but it's just they've progressed over the years, and they've spent 3 long years, 3 hard years, and have really worked and excelled, and now they're ready for the next level, moving on to high school. And we have so much, I know Mike had mentioned this before, but we have so much to offer now in our public schools, and it's changed dramatically, even in the past 3-4 years. And you know, now we have people that want to come to our public schools. They're not leaving at the middle school level. They're staying. They're staying elementary, middle, and high school. And we're just so fortunate to be working in such an amazing district as Norwalk Public Schools. So it was wonderful for me to be part of all the celebrations the past few weeks. And that's it.
Thanks, Heidi. Brian?
Sorry, running into it a little late. Thanks for carrying on this meeting without me. I expected.
Brian, we voted down the budget.
I expected it to run till midnight, like the last few years, this meeting, so congratulate you all on an efficient meeting. I have nothing else to say.
I will just follow up on what Heidi said. You know, we did go to the retirement event, and it wasn't just teachers, but, you know, there were administrators, social workers. I couldn't believe actually how many people I knew. It was kind of scary, actually. But, you know, someone like Alex Kemeny has been a music teacher at Wheaton School for like, I don't know, something like 30 years. I went to her retirement dinner in Monroe. They did this whole show. It was incredible, and really she deserved that. Because she impressed so many kids' lives, parents, everybody. But then, you know, Carol Marinacci, administrator at Norwalk High School, who I've known since I got elected on the board, even though I had no personal connection to Norwalk High School. You know, it just went on and on and on how many people, Miss Wax, math teacher at Norwalk High School, been there for years. I mean, it was really a lot of people that we knew, and it was hard to say goodbye. And I think the key word I used were a lot of powerhouses, you know, people that really had a dramatic impact on our district. And, you know, you can't replace people like that in a lot of ways. But we move on, and that's progress, I guess. I don't know. And also, I went and spoke for the 8th year at Rhoton Middle School promotion ceremony, and that school gets bigger and bigger. They probably won't be able to have the ceremony next year in the school because it'll be too big, and their enrollment's going to be over 500 kids now. So it was neat to be there, and I think it's really fun to be at those graduations because you really see the diversity of our district, of every walks of life for their parents as well as students and staff. So the end of the school year is now behind us, and we get a little break and skip a couple meetings, and then whatever, start getting ready for the next one.
Retreat.
Thanks, Sarah.
So I went to West Rock's promotion as a parent, and Heidi's speech was lovely, and Yvette's speech was lovely. And I went to CGS as a board member, and Dr. Adamowski made me cry a tiny bit because that was really beautiful, what you decided to do. And gosh, I'm a little scatterbrained this evening. I just got back from Quebec. We spent a total of like 16 hours in the car this weekend, I think, so a little fried. Justin wrote an article about my master's thesis project that was in the Hour, and the opening for that's on July 6th, if anybody wants to come.
I just want to note, you know, there were a few of us around here almost 8 years ago, and just thinking about how smoothly this budget went, and the contrast from our first year. Mike, you remember we had just taken office.
Awful.
A couple of weeks later, Elio comes in and says, by the way, there's this $4 million that's missing from the insurance fund. And
It was not funny, Bruce.
I remember it too.
You were on the council,
It was-
he was there.
It was quite a rough introduction to budgeting at the Board of Education, and you know, we had to work our way out of, you know, catastrophically bad year. We laid off 80 people. We had, you know, just terrible things that we had to go through. But one thing that we did was we reversed the decision of a previous board that actually had incredibly eliminated the position of finance director in the biggest budget in the city, and we hired a finance director. And Rich Rudel was terrific. He was succeeded by a terrific state-recognized finance director, superintendents who took it seriously, boards who took it seriously. And I remember talking about that if we can't get our budgetary process under control, we're not going to be able to do anything else. You can talk about curriculum improvements, building improvements, anything else, but if we're running into a crisis every single budget year, nothing's going to get done. And my congratulations to board members and staff who turned that annual chaotic process into a pretty smoothly running machine and developed a good relationship with the city in the process. And the payoff is what you can see tonight. And it's not just the money, it's the strategic operating plan and all the other things that we've accomplished were built on that foundation. So it was great for me to sit here and see this, Tom's work in particular, smoothly cruise through tonight after the way things started when we first got on here 8 years ago.
Great.
You're here. Julie.
I think one thing that has been clear to me over the last couple of months, especially when we've been talking more about the Montessori model at Brookside, when I then compare that to a project I'm doing professionally with a school district in Connecticut right now on developing a strategic operating plan specifically around early childhood education that's not just for their school district but their entire community, and it's been really exciting work to be part of. It makes me reflect on if moving forward in the school district, if we're really to truly address the preparation gaps and the achievement gaps in our district, how important that early childhood education is. And I think about how bummed I am that I don't live in the Brookside district right now, because as the parent of a 2.5-year-old, I would absolutely love and be thrilled to have my child in the Montessori program with the school district. So I'm slightly envious and very excited for all of the families that will get in. We're good. Then I can't be on the board. So it's an exciting for me to see the school district expanding out to developing more early childhood education programs, and I hope that as we continue moving forward with future strategic plans and really looking at preparation and opportunity and achievement gaps, that early childhood education is something that continues to come up in Norwalk. Meanwhile, we removed the pacifier from my son this weekend, and it's been a disaster.
That's always fun.
Mike,
So, yeah,
Vargas,
that's
just-
Yes, Dr. Kimmel, please.
What Mike didn't mention, and just to give folks some idea what was going on, we just approved the $1.7 million reconciliation. Before the $4 million shortfall was discovered, the board was facing a reconciliation, if I remember correctly, it was about $5.7 million.
Correct.
So it was close to $10 million that had to be reconciled. Now, the Board of Estimate actually worked with the city and the board and smoothed it out somewhat. But what'd you say, is it 80, 84 layoffs?
Yeah, yeah. It was
was brutal.
bad way to start off, but we've really
mostly teachers.
We've recovered from it. We have more teachers now than we did then. We've managed to do it in a fiscally responsible way. So it's nice to get to the end of my time on the Board of Education and feel like we're leaving it in somewhat better condition than we started.
That was my first budget cycle as a parent. It was a rude awakening, for sure. And I'm grateful that we're not there today, so thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes information and reports. Now we will move to approval of minutes. Motion to approve the April 21st minutes, please.
May 21st.
What's that?
May 21st.
Oh, sorry, wait. Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Whatever.
Sarah, seconded by Julie. Any corrections? Barbara?
Again, Dr. Kimmel, everywhere it's Mr. Kimmel, it should be Dr. Kimmel. There's a typo under public comment. It should read Dr. Jeff Beckley, not Buckley. And there's a paragraph there about the public speakers. There were 4 members of the public who spoke: Dr. Jeff Buckley and Heike Reicher, teachers and NFT students at Kendall School, read a letter sent to the board by Dr. Beckley outlining teacher concerns. The letter stated results of a December survey of 34 certified members of the staff, which reported 94% of staff opposed changing the model of the calendar, 85% against adding 5 more days to the year, 82% against adding an additional hour to the day, and 71% against adding more professional development on top of the PD days. The letter stated 22 teachers.
Okay, Barbara, where are you going with this?
I'm inserting it in the
Okay, she
minutes. The
can, she
minutes
can
are
watch,
inaccurate.
one, she can watch the video. 2, minutes are not verbatim presentations by everybody, that we've been through that multiple times. And, if they can submit the letter to the secretary to
Include in minutes.
include it, or
If
they
we
can
did
watch
that,
the video or the
I
tape.
would find that acceptable. Thank you.
Look,
Page-
can someone who did not make the statement make the submission to insert. I've never heard of anyone doing it that way,
Did you
unless they were asked to do it.
Did you read what was said? though?
But
It was inaccurate.
I can just go from my own experience, you receive all kinds of documents. Sometimes if they're asked to be inserted, they will be inserted. If they're not asked, I don't.
All right,
think
can we
someone-
amend the language to, right now it says that they were complaining about the summer issues, but in fact, they were submitting survey results. We need to reflect that accurately in the minutes. On page 2, income distinction should read socioeconomic demographics. On page 5, board members and committee report and announcements. The minutes do not reflect any reports or announcements, which we have historically done, so I think that those should be, we should table the minutes until those have been inserted.
Brian?
Excuse me if I'm looking at a different draft, but it should be Mr. Lyons, not Mr. Lyon.
Lyon, yeah.
And that's my only amendment. Thank you.
The amendment I would make is under superintendent report, which is 5, section D. I think two things got mixed up because it talks about the draft of the 2021 calendar. This item was not on the agenda, was added during the meeting. That's correct. Mr. Adamowski, it's doctor, suggested that this item could be discussed further during the June meeting in order for the Kendall teachers to give their input, and because teacher contracts are renegotiated and renewed in June as well. I think those are all not what happened, so if you could review the tape, that's not, those are two different topics that were spoken about at different times that are not connected.
May I move to table these minutes until we've had a chance to amend them?
Before we do that, I would.
If you table, it cuts off debate.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize. Sometimes it's appropriate to do a tabling motion, but I had a couple of.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
I was also concerned, as Barbara is, with the committee representative reports, just for the knowledge of the secretary, who I know is relatively new to handling these. A lot of the significant work of the board is done at the committee level. So committee representative reports should have a brief summary of what each chair represents. I was looking at the bylaws, which say the minutes shall summarize points made by speakers, but are not intended to be a verbatim report of the comments made. This is one of the things that we had gone back and forth which relate to, your comment about, something that a member of the public said. We went through a period of time here where a well-known person who used to show up at every one of our meetings would take up time at every meeting demanding that his comments be added into the last set of minutes, which of course he had no right to do. And I think, a brief summary of what public comments were made is appropriate. Verbatims are clearly not appropriate, as is explicitly stated in our bylaws, section 9326. So I would agree that these need to go back. They need to be reworked. It does seem like that item D is mixing up a couple of concepts, which again, for a new person reporting these things may not be distinctly clear the first time you encounter them. We do need to have the committee representative reports expanded a little bit. Again, not verbatims. We're not looking for quotes of what everybody said. So I think just watch the tape relating to those sections and maybe enhance these things and then bring them back.
Yeah, I reviewed some of the past ones, and it's just a sentence for each announcement.
Yeah.
But it gives some context for people who might be trying to remember historically what happened.
Correct.
So move to table then?
Move to table? I'll just say one thing. We've been through this path, and Mike will remember this very clearly, as will Heidi, when we had a Board of Ed member who I loved, but wanted these long song and dance. And really, if you look at minutes are meant to keep track of votes, motions, and so forth. That is not supposed to be all the language. So I think publishing a whole statement that was made in public comments is not what minutes are for.
I agree and concur. I just think that we need to, the sentiment that was expressed in that paragraph was inaccurate to what occurred.
Okay, Julie, you making a
Move
motion?
to table the minutes pending.
Julie,
additions.
seconded by Sarah, all in favor of tabling? Ryan, joining us? Yeah. Okay, unanimous. Okay, that's now, can we move on to the minutes of June 4th, which was the SGC meeting, which is a complicated meeting to write minutes of, because there's a lot going on. It doesn't set a set format. I did review them from last year, and I remember them thinking they were very comprehensive, and these seem pretty comprehensive as well. Could I have a motion to approve? Dr. Kimmel, seconded by Mr. Meek. Any corrections?
I would just,
I was not present at that meeting.
Okay.
It's
It was
indicated
on.
here
Is
that
it? It is?
that I was, so I should be taken off there.
Okay, great.
I would just suggest that I think it would be more appropriate to list the SGC co-chairs who attended in that other attendees.
Okay, that makes
Because
sense.
it's all embedded in the information, but I think it would be more useful in terms of a reference document with that.
Yeah, we can definitely do that going forwards, if someone remembers next year. Okay, all in favor?
Wait, are we not gonna do it for this one? What I'm suggesting is, can we have that done as part of the edit?
Well, the person who did those minutes is not here right now. We could, I guess, send them back and put it, the names are there.
We table and then approve and.
Well, some of them didn't speak as well. So some of the SGC chairs spoke, some didn't, some deferred to their principals, not all were there.
That's true.
So short of us having a sign-in,
I have a note of who was there, but I think it's a recognition of the effort that was put in by those people to be there, and take their time to report out what they achieved during the year. I think it's appropriate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It would be hard to keep track of, actually. That's why I'm saying, let's make a point of planning it that way next year.
I think a clarification that it was SGC co-chairs as well as principals, because we
Right.
also don't have it noted that principals were there. I believe almost all the principals, if not all of the principals.
No, there were one or two missing.
There were most of the principals, and then the majority of the SGC co-chairs, though not all.
Okay, well, Frank, what do you think? You were there. I don't know, we don't have an official list, do we?
We don't, we also, to Julie's point, we don't have a list of SGC co-chair parents that actually spoke. So my recommendation would be that we look at this going forward, so that we can, more accurately capture who said what.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Can I just make, I wasn't there this go-around this time, but maybe even do we have a sign-up sheet? I'm trying to think, okay. So I think that is a good point for next year, but I think if we can move that forward for the following year, next year, and have them be recognized, I think would be a
Okay.
good idea.
So I guess I make a motion to approve, and if there aren't enough people to approve, then we could table them, I guess, right?
Yep.
Motion to approve?
We had the motion, right?
Yeah, okay, so, Mike, are you approving?
I
Oh, you weren't
wasn't there,
there,
so I'm
sorry.
gonna
So I
Sarah?
wasn't there either, I'm sorry.
Sarah?
Dr. Kimmel approved, motioned.
I don't mind approving them because they seem broadly to have captured the spirit of the thing. There are a couple of typos and stuff, but I don't want to get us into the weeds of typos or anything.
Okay, that's not. Okay, Julie, Corbett, Lemieux, Barbas, Kimmel in favor.
Meek.
And Meek. And Lyons and Keys were not there. Opposition?
Abstain.
Abstention? Okay, Meyer Mitchell abstaining. Okay, that is the approval of the minutes. We will now go into executive sessions.
I'll make a motion to go to executive session for discussion regarding employment of a public officer or employee.
Okay, that motion was made by Mr. Lyons, seconded by Ms. Keys. We'll just have a quick break. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor, I think it's unanimous.
Me.
And if you give me your email address,